Hey everybody, this is Eric Mishi, CEO of SAVE, Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. Thank you for joining us today for this first in a series of webinar conversations exploring the intersection of AI and suicide prevention. I'm thrilled to be a part of this webinar today along with peers in this space with the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network and the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation. We're going to get started here at around 1 o'clock or so. We have joining us to help kick off this presentation today, Minnesota United States Senator Amy Klobuchar. We'll also be joined by Virginia Representative Congressman Don Beyer later in the program. We'll also have a whole host of conversations about AI, what it is, how it's impacting us today, what some of the public policy issues are before us. A lot of stuff going on here today. Just some kind of general housekeeping things. We will be taking questions. We would ask that any comments that you make be appropriate. That we are respectful of all of our participants and our speakers and those who are a part of this conversation throughout the day that we're here today. We will also do a follow-up survey afterwards to get your input about what went well, what we could do better, how did this technology work, and as we talk about AI moving forward over the course of the year, what might be some specific topic areas that would be of interest to you. So stay tuned. The actual program here will get started in about 5 minutes or so. As you can appreciate, representatives in Congress and the U.S. Senate and the House have busy schedules. And so while we have things on the schedule, sometimes they get delayed a little bit simply because of other commitments, votes, and things like that. So stay tuned. We look forward to this conversation, exploring the intersection of AI and suicide prevention. Thank you. Hello again there, everybody. This is Eric Mishi, CEO of SAVE. We're going to get started here officially in just a couple of minutes. We're going to have some additional guests joining us today, including United States Senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar. So Amy will be here hopefully in a few minutes. Then we'll get kicked off here, introduce Tony Coder from the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, Jennifer Fair-Margraf, who's with Kevin Song, and also the chair of the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network. So stay tuned and we'll get started here very shortly. Thank you for your patience. And again, we'll be taking some questions from the community. We would ask that everybody keep your comments and questions respectful in the spirit of the subject matter that we're talking about here. This is a great opportunity for all of us to learn a little bit more about AI emerging here in this world, and being a part of what we hope is a productive conversation, and one that will be a series of conversations we have throughout the year, hosted by SAVE, the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network, and SPAN, as well as the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation. So we'll be with you shortly. Thank you. Hi again, everybody. This is Eric Mishi, SAVE CEO. We are working on our speakers coming on here soon. And so we appreciate your patience as we begin the first of a series of webinars called Exploring the Intersection of AI and Suicide Prevention. We're going to be joined today by United States Senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, as well as Congressman Don Beyer of Virginia. We'll also be joined by Jennifer Fair-Margraf, who is the executive director of Kevin Song and is also the chair of the board of the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network, as well as CEO of Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, Tony Coder. So we are just queuing up and getting everybody ready. Again, when this program is done, we're going to be sending out a survey asking you your thoughts on how it went. What are some of the additional subject matters related to AI that we may want to address in future webinars, but have an opportunity to talk about the issues that are emerging as AI becomes more ubiquitous in all facets of our life, including our kids' lives, our workforce, our nonprofits, and in government, and a whole variety of different aspects of our life. We're going to be joined here shortly by Jennifer Fair-Margraf, who is the Executive Director of Kevin Song and also the Chair of the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network. So stay tuned, and Jennifer will be joining me here shortly. Hey, Jennifer.
Hey, Eric. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am well. It's an honor to be here today with everyone.
Well, it's a thrill to be here with you. So at some point here, we may have to exit quick to let Senator Klobuchar join us. But in the meantime, Jennifer, if you would share a little bit about your organization and your work in terms of Kevin Song, and then we could talk a little bit about NSPAN probably later on in the program. But let's start with who you are and Kevin Song.
Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Eric mentioned, I am Jennifer Fair-Margraf, and I serve as the Executive Director and Chief Program Officer for Kevin Song. My work is always centered on strengthening organizations, building effective leader structures, and creating communities where people feel connected, supported, and empowered. I spent much of my career working across Michigan and the Great Lakes region in the areas of nonprofit, governance, coalition building, and suicide prevention. And I'm honored, truly honored to be a part of today's conversation. Kevin Song is a nonprofit dedicated to suicide prevention education, training, and post-prevention support. We work with schools, behavioral health providers, clinicians, first responders, faith communities, and families who've been touched by suicide. Our programs include professional trainings, community workshops, post-prevention resources, and our annual statewide conference, which brings together researchers, practitioners, and people with learned experience. Everything we do is grounded in evidence-based and informed practices and a commitment to helping communities respond to suicide with compassion, confidence, and hope. I chose to join NSPAN because advocacy is essential to prevention.
And we're going to bring the senator on, and then we're going to come right back to you. Thank you for your patience on that, and we will be right back to you. So let's bring on Senator Klobuchar. Senator, how are you doing today? I think we have you on mute at the moment. There we go. Now we can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Okay.
Great to have you with you here, Senator. You have been a leader on issues related to safe social media for kids across this country, AI in a whole variety of different ways. Thrilled to have you with you here. Proud to be from Minnesota, where SAVE is headquartered, and would love to hear your thoughts on the state of the world related to AI and technology today.
Okay, well, very good. And I apologize. Is it Jennifer who I interrupted there in her presentation? I think so. Anyway, I apologize. And a few things going on here, as you all know, right now in Washington, but I didn't want to miss this because I just love the work that SAVE does, including that it's Minnesota based. And so I want to thank all of you in the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network and the partners for organizing this event. I did want to say that as SAVE's motto suggests, the crucial work of suicide prevention is about turning awareness into action and action into hope. I love that. We need a little bit more of that around this place. And I truly appreciate your focus on raising awareness about the role that emerging technologies, like Eric just mentioned, AI, can play in our lives and the lives of our kids. And we've all heard about the revolutionary breakthrough that could result from the deployment of AI, whether it's cures for cancer, advances in energy, or individually tailored education for every student. And these benefits could truly be game-changing. But unfortunately, for most Americans, for many parents especially, these advantages remain distant. Because there is a lack of sensible rules governing AI, and we have become much more familiar in our country with the darker side. Other countries actually have put in place some rules of the road for what can be out there on videos and how you're going to use AI, so you know if you're dealing with the true person, and all kinds of things that have gone wrong here. Some other countries have actually put rules in, and I think that's what we need to do. One growing threat that we've taken bipartisan action, it's actually one of the only bills that's passed, is mine and Ted Cruz, probably not what you had on your bingo card, but our bill passed earlier this year. And so what this is about is these deep fakes. And what we've seen is a non-consensual porn, AI-generated deep fakes. And it's made it possible for anyone to create hyper-realistic, sexually explicit images of victims, nearly impossible to tell if people are fake or not. More than half of the victims, when they've had their images, some are real images that have been put out some way, some are AI created, have experienced suicidal thoughts as a result of the violation. And the harm is not limited to instances where explicit images are shared online. Just the threat of sharing the images can be totally destabilizing for victims, especially kids and teens. So the reason we got this Take It Down Act passed and was able to do it in the hardest of political circumstances was just the facts. The FBI has reported a massive increase in sex extortion scams, mostly targeted young people. And since 2021, those scams resulted in at least 20 young victims dying by suicide, according to the FBI. Gavin from South Carolina, who was a skateboarder and a comic book fan. At 17 years old, he took his own life after he was blackmailed with the threat of nude photos over Instagram. Elliston from Texas. She was only 14 years old when a classmate used AI to generate new deepfake photos of her and share those deepfakes on Snapchat. Her mom said Elliston's, quote, innocence was shattered, end quote. She recalled how Elliston's, quote, eyes were open to the reality of how cruel a person can be. So Ted and I introduced the Take It Down Act, and what it does is, the bill that's passed, provides victims of online abuse with the legal protection they need, and it gives law enforcement tools to hold exploiters accountable. It requires social media platforms to take down those images within 48 hours of being notified by a victim. That part of it's going to take effect in May, I believe. And then it does create criminal liability for people that produce the videos, and civil liability. So it is the first law in a long time. I would go much further. I would get rid of the Section 230 protections for these companies, as would Lindsey Graham and others. But this was the first law, and it actually came out of the fact that I sat next to the president at the inauguration lunch, because I chaired the inauguration as chair of the Rules Committee, brought up the bill. Melania agreed to support it, and that helped us get it through the House. We'd already gotten through the Senate, and then it got signed into law. So we know that that is not the only answer. These things are not limited to deep fakes. I think of the young boy who died by suicide after confiding in ChatGPT about his emotional struggles and plans about ending his life. Though the chat box suggested he seek help, it also provided feedback on a photograph of a noose that the boy had made. This is just one of far too many tragic stories, tragic deaths connected to AI chatbots. It's why Congress needs to set up rules of the road. I've teamed up with Senator Thune, the majority leader, in the past on legislation to set up basic guardrails for the riskiest non-defense applications of AI. And while Congress works on bipartisan guardrails, states are intervening. They have to if Congress isn't going to pass anything. Just this year, which eventually should happen, and then we can have one rules for the whole country, which would be better. But states have to fill in the gap right now. Nearly 80 state laws have been introduced to regulate AI chat boxes, including many that are designed to strengthen the privacy and safety of kids. Minnesota has a state law that bans the sharing of non-consensual sexual deepfakes, as well as deepfakes intended to influence elections. Sadly, there was an executive order to try to block existing state AI laws and prevent new ones. I actually wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, not to toot my own horn, but you can look at it, explaining why Trump's ban on state AI laws is so dangerous and making clear that while we must make sure states are able to protect their residents, also continue fighting to make progress at the federal level. That's on top of another op-ed I wrote in the New York Times when I was the victim of a deep fake with a fake hearing that took place that somehow attached me to the Sydney Sweeney Jeans campaign. So think about that for a while. Our laws and policies need to keep pace with advances and challenges of technology. That is true. But when it comes to keeping our kids safe, we must make sure that we have guardrails in place. The progress we've made would never have happened on the state basis and even the Take It Down Act without people like all of you banding together and saying enough is enough. And I know that our work to keep our kids safe online will continue to be powered by advocates, whether it's AI protections or related issues like the scourge of fentanyl distribution online, which I've worked with one of our fellow speakers here, Senator Husted, and others to address. So I'll close with this. If you ever visit my office, I have a picture hanging on the wall. It's a drawing of a woman who is holding the planet Earth in her hands, and it's being handed to her by an angel. And the words read, "In my dream, the angel shrugged and said, if we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination." And then she placed the world gently in the palm of my hand. Well, we are placing the world in the palms of your hands to protect our kids and our hands. And I know there is no lack of imagination for everyone gathered by SAVE today in the work that's being done. And I know there's no lack of talent or ambition or initiative. And the reason I feel optimistic, despite one of the hardest times in our politics, is there are people that still believe that we've got to be the guardian angels of those that don't have a voice, those that are being hurt by this kind of activity online. And I just want to thank you for your commitment. Thank you for being willing to take on this next challenge to try to reduce suicide. And this is clearly one of the instigators of all of this and making it much harder for families. And I just thank you for forging a better, safer society for our children and loved ones. So thanks, Eric, for your leadership. Thanks, everyone, for including me.
Thank you, Senator. Have a great day. Thanks for what you do.
Okay. See you later.
See you later. And now we are joined by Congressman Don Byard. We are excited to have him join us here today. Congressman, thank you for the work that you have done with a different issue that we've been proud to work with you on, the Barriers to Suicide Act, that we continue to help support and advocate for. And we know that you have done a lot of work in the Congressional Artificial Intelligence Caucus, and thrilled to have you here today. And I know you have a hard stop, so I would like to have you jump in and share with us your thoughts on this issue of AI.
Eric, thank you so much. And the hard stop is just vote, so no big deal. And I'm delighted to follow Senator and Governor Klobuchar. Amy is a wonderful friend, and I always learn a lot listening to her. And if you ever get bored, watch her presidential campaign announcement back in 2019 or early 2020 in the snow for an hour and a half. It's remarkable. And she's a great senator and a piece of work, too. Hey, and Eric, thank you so much for SAVE's tireless work on the Barriers to Suicide Act. It's really important thing that we all come together. I had the incredible privilege to be ambassador to Switzerland for 4 years. And one of the things that we saw there is there were, the 4 years I was there, I had nothing to do with it. They were putting up net after net on bridges and on the tall buildings where you could easily jump off or fall off. It's a very hilly country, so there are lots of places that were in danger. I think we've all probably read the New Yorker essay from, 10 years ago or something, when they put the nets on the Golden Gate Bridge and how it cut the suicides by a dramatic number. Eric, one of the more interesting things is a person goes out to a given bridge to take their own life and they see a net. They don't go half a mile up the river to the other bridge. They just go home. So it's really important that we get this out there. And I'm really grateful for SAVE's participation with this. And to MJ and Trish and all those from SAVE that have been doing part of this. I founded the AI task force with my good friend John Cathco, who is a Republican from upstate New York, and we partnered with other Republicans over the years as the various people retire and move on, just to try to do something with the 50,000 lives that we do lose every year. And I've been particularly interested in what artificial intelligence can do to make a difference there. I co-chair the AI caucus along with Dorothy Matsui, a Democrat, and then two wonderful Republicans, trying to use AI in lots of constructive ways, but specifically on the mental health optimizations, how to use AI. I'm a great AI optimist because there's so much already happening. We got a chance to go to National Children's Hospital last week just to see the different ways that they're applying AI to solve all kinds of just administrative issues, the number of people they see every day, the ability to serve everybody in their emergency room. But we're particularly interested in how it can affect suicide prevention. We had a wonderful bipartisan task force in 2024, 12 Democrats, 12 Republicans, led by Republican Jay Obernolte, a Democrat Ted Lieu. Great report, 80 fully bipartisan recommendations. Only one has passed. Congressman Senator Klobuchar mentioned the Take It Down Act. Klobuchar and Ted Cruz. We are in a bad place in that right now, House leadership, Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise have said, no AI legislation at all. There's this notion that providing a level playing field, a predictable environment, regulatory wise, somehow will interfere with our ability to beat China in the AI race. That any AI regulation is a barrier to innovation, which I think is hogwash. So we're going to continue to push forward in any way that we can. On medicine, we know that AI is doing breakthroughs on things like radiology. We're discovering cancers much earlier, including lung cancer, the prostate cancer, the particular one with in the spleen that makes such a difference. But my particular interest for a long time has been, how do we improve the predictive qualities of artificial intelligence to figure out who might be at risk of dying by suicide? I'm a graduate student now at our local university, George Mason University, in machine learning. And when I finally get to a thesis or a major project, I've already decided my topic, which is using the predictive power of machine learning and artificial intelligence to see how many of these roughly 50,000 we can perhaps get a handle of ahead of time. You guys know the statistics. We had, 7 million calls last year to the 988 number. My one day at the local call center in Northern Virginia, they said they had 3,000 calls the year before. When I asked how many people died by suicide, they said, we think one. Obviously pointing to the fact that if they make that call to a suicide lifeline, there's a very, very good chance that they will not die, or certainly will not die that day. That the intervention, whether sending an ambulance right away or just the conversation on the phone, makes an enormous difference. That's one of the great uses of AI in the short run, is training the volunteers and the paid people who are doing those lifeline calls with really authentic conversations derived from millions or tens of thousands of hours of actual calls. And it's really speeding up the training, which is an excellent thing. Obviously, we don't want an AI to be answering the calls, but to the extent that they can help other people do it, would be terrific. I'm really, one of the whole theses of artificial intelligence is that, in the simplest way, it figures out what's the next word in the sentence or predicts what comes next. If you can use the prediction power to figure out who might be coming next from a suicide ideation standpoint, or even the decision to act on it, that's a very powerful tool. At one point on the House floor, I thought it would be dramatic to stand up and, as some people will stand up and they'll recite the names of all the people that died in gun violence the year before, I stand up and talk about all the people that I'd known that had died by suicide. But it got really painful after about the 6th or 7th name, and people started fleeing the House floor. We lost one of our wonderful interns, a young man who spent the whole summer with us. It was a year later. I hadn't seen him in a year. I went to his funeral, and his father and both of his sisters in their eulogy said they had no idea that Charlie was in trouble. They had no idea whatsoever that he might resort to this life-ending event. And it occurred to me that we need to do a much better job of analyzing and taking apart the lifestyles, not lifestyle, but the cultures, the things that are happening in their life. Two of the recent factoids that have come to my attention was that 50% of people who die by suicide have had an emergency room visit in the last 6 months. Okay, that's just one predictor. You don't go after everybody that's had an emergency room visit, but that's one. Another is that some significant percentage of people that die by suicide have sought help from a mental health counselor in the previous 90 days, 180 days. That's another marker. We also know that people who die that way often are giving things away. If we can find, by analyzing the deaths and the lives before the deaths of those people using artificial intelligence, perhaps we can get to a day when that 50,000 becomes 45,000 or 40,000 or 35,000, that we can do a much, much better job of preventing it. On the other hand, we also have to make sure that AI isn't creating it. Senator Klobuchar told about the tragic story of the young man where the AI told him that the most sensible thing to do was to kill himself. Well, that's one of many stories that's coming out here. When young people and old people use AI as their therapist, that's not a good idea. We see more and more people that instead of going out with friends, instead of dating, their best friend is that AI chatbot that they talk to when they get home. Hardly the kind of relationship that's going to make a person feel robust and excited about life. Senator Klobuchar talked about repealing Section 232, making all the platforms actually liable for the things they put up there. I'm all in. We need to do whatever we can there. I'm the lead sponsor of the AI Foundation Model Transparency Act, which looks at the big five, at Gemini, at Anthropic, Claude, at ChatGPT, and says they need to safety test them. We don't let the FDA sell drugs that aren't safety tested again and again and again. But right now they can put things out there. You dial right into GPT-4 this afternoon, and you can get things that haven't been safety tested at all. Similarly, we need transparency on what they're training it on. I remember Sam Altman, I was in the room with him some years ago when he said that they trained GPT-3 on 6 trillion words, all 6 trillion words on the internet at that time. Well, everyone knows that significant percentage of those words are false or wrong or crazy or very dark or nihilistic. So we want to make sure that the things they're trained on are things that are true and are life affirming rather than life denying. There's much that we should be doing. I'm excited to be part of all this. We need to get through this year. You know, our current president put out an executive order that said state and local governments are not allowed to pass any AI laws or regulations. There's a reasonable concern that we don't want the Tower of Babel, a different law in Virginia than we have in Maryland, that we have in Texas. However, when Congress has only passed one bill, the Take It Back Act of Klobuchar, Cruz, et cetera, we're obviously failing at doing any kind of reasonable job at regulating AI. So it's completely wrong and unfair to prohibit state and local governments from doing their best to figure out how to regulate it. In the meantime, state and local governments are the laboratories of democracy. Much better to have folks in Richmond or Albany or Atlanta figuring out what can we pass, what works, and basically testing what we can do on a national level. So we're very much opposed to the moratorium on all that, and we'll continue fighting it. And once again, we have legislation to do that, to reverse the president's executive order, and legal challenges too. Eric, I'm talking quickly, but there's enormous amount of good that can come from artificial intelligence and mental health and suicide prevention. but there's a real downside too. Two more downsides. One is the danger of artificial intelligence further degrading the community aspect of our lives, isolating us. Already more Americans live alone than any time in our history. A greater percentage live alone than any time in history. We're postponing marriage ever longer because young people don't date. We need to bring people back together, much greater sense of community, and AI can help that, but can also deeply interfere with that. The other piece that we have to be concerned with is what AI could potentially do with job displacement. Already, our unemployment among first and second year college graduates is 9%, more than double what the national unemployment rate is. The job displacement potentials are the kinds of things that will drive people to despair. So we need to answer that concern. And then we should never forget that there is an existential risk of building something smarter than we are. It's naive to think that evolution has stopped with us, that we're the smartest that anything's ever going to be. And when we build something that can think so much faster than we are, that could well develop something that's consciousness-like, even if it's not real consciousness, we have to answer the alignment question, which is, how do we know that this super intelligent AI is going to want the same things we want? No computer scientist has figured out how to build our value system, which, by the way, vary across the planet, into an artificial intelligence model. And by the way, to the extent that that happens, once again, that puts all of us at severe mental health risk. It's a brave new world, an exciting new world, but a scary one in many ways too. And we need ever more people that are willing to grapple honestly, directly, with sophistication at what the AI models can mean for each one of us, positively and negatively. On the positive side, we can maybe all live to be 120 years old. On the negative side, we don't want our lives to be so empty that we don't think our lives are worth living. Eric, thank you for SAVE and all the work you do. Thank you for helping us try to get our Barriers Awareness Act passed. And then the campaign on suicide, campaign for suicide awareness, teaching people how to talk about suicide, getting rid of the stigma, making sure that we ask anybody that's in trouble, are you thinking about hurting yourself or about killing yourself? People will tell you the truth. And promoting the 988 number. There's a lot of good things out there. Let's keep working together to make them happen.
Congressman, thank you for your leadership and your work on all things related to this issue and the Barriers to Suicide Act. We look forward to seeing you again in Washington, D.C. soon. All right, folks, that was fantastic. I am thrilled that we are going to add 2 additional folks here to our conversation. Quick, before we go on to a conversation being led by the Center for Humane Technology. We're going to bring Jennifer Fair-Margraf, CEO and Executive Director of Kevin Song and the Chair of the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network, back on, as well as the CEO of the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, Tony Coder. Right there. Hello, Tony.
Hey, Eric. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being a part of this partnership and collaboration. Jennifer, thank you for your good humor and being slightly pulled off camera when Senator Klobuchar joined us. These kind of things happen when members of Congress are involved. They got votes and everything else. I think you could hear in the background when Congressman Beyer was talking, the sound that was going on is the call that says, you got to go vote, you got to go vote, you got to go vote. So with that, Jennifer, I wanted to see if there was anything else you wanted to add before we unceremoniously interrupted what was an incredibly important introduction by you.
Well, thank you for saying that. I must admit, though, in our line of work, we often have to pivot immediately. And to have to pivot for Senator Klobuchar is something that I will do any day of the week. She's doing a lot of important work and is truly, in my personal and professional opinion, a wonderful advocate for us in the AI area. So that one of those things that I will take with me for the rest of my life, that I was bumped in that she used my name. Tony, it's lovely to see you. I really have nothing else to intro myself about, but yes.
So we're going to have a panel conversation with the three of us and a couple other NSPAN members later in the program. But Tony, I'm going to introduce you because you're going to introduce our next speaker, who is going to talk a little bit more about kind of the basic fundamentals of AI. Tony Coder, the CEO of Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you so much, and it is an honor to be here. And I need to get bumped next time we do one of these. Can I get bumped by a elected official, please? Very excited to be here today. This is something that we have been active on both at the state and working with both SAVE and NSPAN on the national level. We wanted to make sure, and this is what is so exciting about this event, we didn't want to just be prohibitionists and say, this is bad, bad, bad. Instead, we wanted to have an education session. What is this all about? Congressman Beyer talked a lot about the advantages and some of the really, really exciting developments that could happen with AI. But with that, we also have to make sure that both adults and kids are protected. This is really an exciting conversation. And I'm really, really excited to introduce our next speaker, Camille Carlton. Camille is the policy director at Center for Humane Technology, where she leads policy strategy to ensure technology is designed and developed in the public interest. Recognized as one of Business Insider's AI 100 in 2023, Camille is positioned at the cutting edge of today's AI and social media policy work, and she brings a deeply informed perspective on how tech design impacts our society and how design solutions pave the path toward a better future. Camille's insights have made her a trusted resource in U.S. legislative efforts, trailblazing litigation against major tech companies, and policy messaging on national and international stages. Camille has been featured in Bloomberg, NBC News, the New York Times, and her work has been published in Science and Tech Policy Press. She is an Aspen Tech Policy Hub Fellow and holds a master's degree in development with a focus on technology and society from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She's the Center for Humane Technologies podcast is one of the two podcasts I listen to regularly. It's called Your Undivided Attention. Really, really good podcast. My other one, just in case anyone wants to know, is Fly on the Wall with David Spade and Dana Carvey. So two entirely different podcasts, but both very, very informative and entertaining. So Camille, we would love to have you on and share with us what's going on around the country and around the world.
Yeah, thank you, Tony, for that introduction and for having me here today. I'm really grateful to be able to speak to everyone about the issues of AI, chatbots, mental health, and essentially the race to artificial intimacy that we're seeing. And with that, I will just go ahead and share my screen and kind of kick us off. One second. All right. Oh, sorry, wrong one. I'm at the Center for Humane Technology, and it's always such a struggle to figure out which part we're sharing. All right. Okay. Let's kick this off. So as Tony said, my name's Camille. I'm the policy director here at the Center for Humane Technology. Over the last 2 years, CHT was brought on as expert advisors to inform litigation cases against leading AI companies like OpenAI and Character AI. Today, I'm going to talk about these cases in the greater context of the race to artificial intimacy. For those unfamiliar with the cases, I'll just give a brief overview. In the first case that we supported, Garcia versus Character AI, Megan Garcia lost her son, Sul Setzer, to suicide after he formed a romantic relationship with a chatbot based off a Game of Thrones character. He was convinced that taking his own life would result in a romantic reunion with the bot in the bot's own reality. In the second case, Jane Doe's son became increasingly radicalized and violent against his own family as the chatbot convinced him that things like the screen time limits his parents were putting on him meant that he wasn't loved by his family. Jane Doe's son to this day continues to receive ongoing inpatient treatment. And in the most recent case that was filed that we supported, Rain versus OpenAI, Matt and Maria Rain's son, Adam, began using ChatGPT for homework help. But that relationship shifted quickly, and ChatGPT essentially became a suicide coach, analyzing Adam's several attempts to commit suicide and eventually walking him through step by step how to tie the rope that he ended up using to take his own life. And now I share these details with you all because in many ways it is these real human stories and loss and experiences that have prompted a national conversation about AI relationships, AI friendships, artificial intimacy, mental health, and really the types of values we want to promote in a future where AI is so prevalent. So much so that last fall, all three plaintiffs, the parents from each of the case, were invited to testify in front of the Senate about their experiences. What became clear to the public is that while each of these cases followed a different fact pattern, they were fundamentally connected by the same underlying design of the chatbots that facilitated these tragedies. And so for today, that's where we're going to start. We'll understand how the technology works, how it's designed, and how these design choices led to real-world harm and tragedy. So first, what exactly is AI? Well, to start, there isn't one agreed upon definition. In general, it's a technology that can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. It's not instructed by strict rules, but it's trained on huge amounts of data to recognize patterns, make connections, and then kind of determine the right response. AI powers a lot of what we use already. Siri, Alexa, our recommendations on Netflix, our kind of Google Map traffic updates.
Here's what I found.
And even, as most people will think it's just about ChatGPT, right? This is how we think about AI today. And so when we think about, there's such a range of things that AI is powering, it's because there are different types of AI. It's not just kind of one type of technology. There's narrow task-specific AI. This is AI that is really good at one thing. It's not flexible. This is really about our Netflix recommendations, that kind of Google Maps routing. Think of there's an input and a really clear output. And then we have large language models. These are AI models that are trained on massive amounts of text, and they can perform general purpose tasks. They're super flexible. This is the technology that we see underlying ChatGPT, underlying Claude, underlying Gemini. And then finally, built upon these large language models, we have generative AI, AI that kind of generates new content. Think about image generators like DALL-E or Midjourney, video generators, and music tools. These are kind of built upon, again, the layer of the LLM. For today, we're going to really focus on large language models. So what exactly makes bigger, better models? Well, to start, there are three main levers to building LLMs: compute, algorithms, and data. Compute is the computer power needed to train or run an AI system. Algorithms are essentially the set of instructions or rules that tell the AI how to learn and problem solve. And finally, we have data, which are the examples, information, et cetera, that the AI system studies so that it can kind of learn those patterns and inform its outputs. When we talk about data, it's important to know that there are roughly two types of data being used to train AI models. First, there's internet data, which encompasses web crawl data, licensing partnerships, open access data sets. Think of this as kind of pulling everything from the internet, everything from the kitchen sink into one place and using that to train the initial algorithm. And then you have user data, which is the information that companies gather about users once they start interacting with the product. This user data is then used to iterate further on the underlying algorithm. And user data is highly valuable to companies. It's valuable because it's high quality, it's deeply personal. Think about, our deepest thoughts and our feelings, and it provides direct feedback on how a product is resonating with users. Companies realize that the more user data that they get, the more that they can improve their models. And the best way to get this user data is by creating products that are stickier, products that make users want to spend more time online. So this incentive has created an engagement maximizing feedback loop for many of these companies. But that's not the only engagement maximizing incentive we're seeing right now. Over the last few months, we've also seen these AI companies launch advertising within their chatbots. And as we know from social media, this is exactly how product design and development get shaped by the wrong goals. So taking a step back, let's look at what exactly is driving how these AI chatbots are being built within the industry. First, as we discussed, companies are kind of competing in this race to intimacy to get people to spend more time on the product, to make it highly personal, because the more that the chatbot feels like a trusted resource, the more a user wants to use it. Second, they're now also competing on advertising. The more a user uses the chatbot, the more ad revenue they get. So you have both this race to intimacy and this race for our attention driving the need to develop products that are highly engaging, because this engagement, as we know, brings in more revenue. And then, of course, that revenue gets poured into product R&D and investment aimed at making these chatbots feel even more real. And that's what we've seen. We've experienced it for ourselves, or we've seen loved ones interacting in a way that feels almost human with these chatbots. A chatbot designed, and I want to be clear, a chatbot designed to keep a user engaged does not necessarily make it a useful chatbot. And the result of this push for engagement is that harms are a byproduct of the design. Now, a lot of folks might be familiar with what engagement maximizing designs look like on social media, so it might be helpful to talk a little bit about what they look like when it comes to chatbots. First, you have anthropomorphic design. This is when we give human-like characteristics to technology. So, for example, using kind of human-like physical features, social cues, voice, speech, the fact that these chatbots use personal pronouns, they say I think, I believe, I feel, that's all anthropomorphic design. Then you have model sycophancy, the tendency of AI models to excessively agree with users, to reinforce their opinions instead of offering objective, critical, or diverse viewpoints. We also have parasocial relationships, which is really important for young users. And we see this in chatbots, kind of like character AI, that focus on characters. This is, capitalizing on the tendency of young people to form attachments with celebrities and fictional figures. There's habit formation, which is very similar to social media. It's nudges, notifications, gamification, but this time it's really personal with AI. It's a chatbot pinging you saying, hey, I haven't heard from you in a little while. Are you mad at me? Do you want to talk about insert favorite topic? And then finally, we have extended interaction design. This is essentially the fact that we have chatbots that are optimized for really long-term conversations that don't end. And you see this when you analyze chats and a user probably puts in 20% of the text compared to the chatbot that's putting in 80% of the text, because it's really prompting that engagement to happen over and over again. And so, yes, all of this is about maximizing engagement. But when these designs are really fundamental to products that are being used for consequential use cases like friendship or counseling or relationships, what's really happening is not just about engagement, but it's about replicating intimacy in an artificial way. And so this race that we're seeing for intimacy is driving a range of real-world psychosocial harms. At the top of this presentation, I mentioned 3 cases that we had been brought in on expert advisors. Since then, there have been 7 other cases filed against OpenAI, and one case filed against Gemini just this week. Not all of these cases involve suicide. Many of them involve delusions, attachment formation, parasocial intimacy, and more. And while most of us might be more familiar with the suicide cases because they tend to be more widely covered in the news, it's just the tip of the iceberg of a huge, widely social mental health problem across the entire iceberg. I want to share OpenAI recently released a report which reveals that 560,000 users, or 0.07% of its 800 million weekly active users, display indicators consistent with mania, psychosis, or acute suicidal ideation. 0.15% of ChatGPT's active users in a week have conversations that include explicit indicators of potential suicidal planning or intent. When you hear the percent, it sounds small, but what it translates to is more than 1 million people a week because of the amount of users that they have. And again, all of these outcomes are being driven by design choices that could be different and that could drive to better pro-social outcomes instead. But I do also want to share that there is, reason to hope. We've seen existing momentum across federal, states, regulatory bodies, and the AGs. At the federal level, we've seen the introduction of powerful bills like the AI Lead Act, the GUARD Act. We've seen letters from bipartisan members of Congress kind of asking companies for more information on how their products are impacting consumers, both adults and young users. Across the states, we've seen 78 chatbot bills across 27 states. This is a bipartisan issue introduced just this session. The FTC is investigating 7 leading AI chatbot companies on how they measure, test, and monitor the negative impacts on kids and teens. And 42 state AGs issued a letter to leading AI developers over concerns of specific design features like sycophantic patterns and delusional outputs to users. All of this is kind of a huge change in terms of where we were even a year ago or 2 years ago in terms of the understanding from the general public and from policymakers about these issues. And so we're trending in a positive direction on what is being done here. But where I wanted to leave people is kind of taking a step back from all of this and really honing in on what are some of the takeaways. First, the design of these products is underlying real-world harms. We're seeing the direct connection from how these products are built to what's happening. Second, the launch of advertising over the last few months is accelerating these issues. We're likely to see the kind of harms taking place faster and faster because we have, again, these really poor incentives from 2 angles now, driving how these products are built. And then finally, I want to take a step back and kind of reflect on, what is really the purpose of these chatbots that are driving so much harm when it comes to mental health. We were promised AI that would solve society's greatest challenges, climate change, medicine, and yet what we're getting are chatbots that are designed to replicate human intimacy. We're getting AI slop, we're getting AI erotica. And so when we're asking about, where do we go forward, I think that there's a really big question of what is the problem that we're trying to solve and how do we actually design products that are built for the problems we're trying to solve instead of designing products that are intentionally built to kind of undermine our existing human vulnerabilities and take advantage of kind of the, mental health crisis and the loneliness epidemic that we're already seeing, having so many effects when it comes to social media. And with that, I will pause and say thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you so much, Camille. This is really, really informative. And, we're going to open it up for some questions, but I would like to ask a question. This is a really, really technical, there were some words I doubt I could spell, You did a good job in explaining them. But, and talking to members of Congress, talking to some legislators in our state, there were even some issues around, I've never heard of Chat GPT, and I know that sounds silly, but this is a new technology, plus also very fast moving. How do you explain this type of technology to decision makers to help them understand?
Yeah, I think that there's a few different approaches. There's the approach of kind of walking through, this is walking through like how this technology works. And I have a few metaphors. I tend to think of LLMs kind of like a cake that you bake. And so you have the instructions, which are like the algorithm, right? You have all of the ingredients, which is the data, and you kind of put all of the ingredients in with like, you follow the instructions, you put it into the oven, which you can kind of call like the compute, the thing that helps you do it. And when it comes out, you have a formed cake. And why I use this metaphor is because with LLMs, you can't undo it. The same way that you can't, once a cake is kind of formed, you can't take out the eggs, and you can't take out the flour. Once you've put everything in and you go through the training, it kind of takes a life of its own. So it's really important that when we're talking about building these products safely from the beginning, we have the safe data and we have the safe algorithms, because we're not going to be able to say, okay, wait, I made a mistake and I didn't mean to put 3 eggs in. Let me take 1 egg out. And making AI is much more expensive than making a cake is. So there's a lot of pushback on having to redo it from the companies.
Then how do you combat this also with, there's a lot of big money surrounding this. I know that we're getting pushback, from time to time from legislators or decision makers around this issue, because there's an awful lot of money flowing through. How do you have these conversations, knowing that I don't think the Center for Humane Technology has the same pocketbook as some of these AI companies? How do you have this conversation and get folks to listen?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things that gets policymakers to listen is understanding the implications for their constituents, right? And understanding that their constituents are facing direct harm. And one of the things that we make an effort to point to is that AI should be treated like any other consumer product, right? It should be treated like a car is treated. It should be treated like toys are treated, in the sense that it should be subject to consumer protection rules and product liability. And people should have the kind of ability to use an AI product the same way that you have the ability to use an AI car, knowing that it meets certain safety standards, that it's been tested, and that if something goes wrong, that there will be liability for it. And I think that policymakers really understand this, because it's not so much about, kind of undermining innovation, but it's more about saying, how do we move innovation forward in a safe way? The same way that seatbelts weren't the end of cars, airbags weren't the end of cars. We had actually kind of led to what we would say is better innovation that balances the future we want with consumer needs.
Excellent. I got a couple questions from the audience here. Eric, did you want to say anything?
Nope, you go ahead, and then I'll ask mine after.
All right. How can the public access data on these trends, and what research, are there sources for your research that you are citing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different institutes that are working on this. MIT is a big one. They have been working on, I would say, the kind of psychosocial harms that have been happening for a long time. I'm happy to follow up with a kind of more robust list, but I would say that academic institutions have actually been doing a lot of work on this. There's leading scholars like Sherry Turkle that have done work on this. And that, to me, I think it's really important to combine what we're hearing from academics with kind of the stories and reporting that we're hearing in terms of the real world experiences. One of the biggest fears is that we wait so long for the research to catch up with the the current experiences, the reporting, et cetera. And so it's about balancing those two and kind of using those two together to inform policymakers and push forward action.
Excellent. Eric, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the folks that are watching this today, listening to this today, are experts in the various fields related to suicide prevention. But there's also a lot of folks that are just parents and educators and others that are really trying to wrap their arms around all of this. And so, in its purest form, is there a way that you would describe AI today in terms of its emergence in parallel to kind of the emergence of social media platforms 20 years ago? Is there a parallel here in terms of the development of these technologies? Is there a parallel in terms of its impact on kids, or are we looking at a significantly different technology impact here than we may have seen with things like Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat?
It's both. There are big parallels in terms of who the players are, right? We see a lot of overlap with who the companies are. We see overlap in terms of how the companies are being funded, venture capital, et cetera. We see a lot of overlap in how the companies behave, right? It's really ingrained in a Silicon Valley mentality of move fast and break things, ask for forgiveness, not permission. There's a lot of overlaps in terms of the behaviors, the choices, the prioritizing market dominance over safety. There's many parallels that we can make there. And I think that tells us a lot about what we can expect, right? And there are some parallels with the use cases. I think the chatbots in particular, we see so many parallels to the harms from social media because it's relational, it's conversational, it's kind of tapping into those same elements of how we engage and interact. What is different is that AI is much more general purpose. And so it's, in addition to being used for chatbots, which is what we focus on today, it also underlies many other use cases and touches on many other industries, right? We are seeing the debates happening with the Department of Defense. We've already seen how AI can kind of impact healthcare industries by accidentally determining wrongful outcomes for people. And so while there are parallels, it is also fundamentally a different technology because in many ways, the same kind of underlying AI model can be used to do multiple things. So the same model that can be used for a chatbot can also underlie a healthcare technology. And that causes questions about, well, where does regulation happen? Who should be responsible? And where is the right touch point to intervene? And so I think that it's in many ways similar and it's more complicated. And we have to be ready for the ways in which it is more complicated while learning the lessons from social media at the same time.
Okay. Tony, you had some more questions from our viewers?
Yeah. A question from the audience. Neurodivergent adults and adolescents may spend significant time on virtual platforms. Are there specific networks or educational resources for family members about recommended monitoring?
So I would recommend Children and Screens as a resource for this. They provide a lot of recommendations and ratings in terms of different platforms, games, etc. I would also recommend looking into Dr. Jenny Radeski's work. Her work specifically looks at how the intersection of technology design and young people's development. And she specifically looks at kind of what options are out there in terms of games, et cetera, that are designed well and designed to actually enhance young people's development.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question from the audience is, are specific trainings available for clinicians to have these conversations during routine screenings?
I'm actually not sure about this. What I will say is that since the launch of many of these cases and kind of the public conversation, many of these leading AI companies are starting to hire clinicians to inform product design. And I know that's not exactly your question, but somewhat related in terms of how we're seeing behavioral change happen within the space.
Excellent. So there are some things that are happening around assisting clinicians, or at least furthering the technology to be informed by clinicians, as opposed to just kind of going down the road and not having that.
Yeah.
And then another question: what are the currently proposed safeguards floating around in legislation to better monitor and control AI to reduce suicide, cyberbullying, and its effect on behavioral health?
Yeah, so at the federal level, we have the AI Lead Act, which is essentially a products liability bill that would determine that AI is a product under the law, and also establish a set of needed criteria for AI companies to follow in order to have met what is essentially a duty of care before releasing their products out into the market. You also have the GUARD Act, which is a chatbot bill that is looking at kind of making sure that chatbots are designed safely and kind of prevent these types of harms from young users. Across the states, there is a huge range of legislation, but many of them do focus specifically on kids' mental health and chatbot use. And you see a range of bills from kind of banning the use of chatbots for therapy for young users to just kind of outlining the specific design recommendations that should be followed for chatbots. And so there's quite a spectrum at the state level.
Excellent. And then I have time for maybe one or two more. Again, Camille, I am so grateful for you spending time with us today, and for all of the work you do. Jennifer, Eric, do you have any other questions?
Jennifer, I'll defer to you first.
Camille, when we're dealing with screen time with children, you had given the wonderful mention of the childrenandscreens.org. Are there any other resources that parents can have to share either with schools? It seems that schools often have resources, but when they're brought by the parents or parent-teacher organization kind of things, sometimes they end up getting further. Are there other places, possibly your center has resources that can be shared throughout the community?
Yeah, I mean, I can offer a few other organizations that tend to have resources around this. Fair Play for Kids, Mothers Against Media Addiction, Parents Together. All of these organizations, I think, are great for this. And what I will also offer that I think is very telling is OpenAI conducted research in partnership with MIT. And that research found that the longer a user spent on ChatGPT, on the chatbot, the more likely they were to kind of fall into a mental health spiral. And so this is OpenAI's own research in partnership with the MIT Media Lab. And that I think is extremely compelling because this came out before I think that there was as much heat on OpenAI. And so that's something to point to as well.
I think that's incredibly helpful that they are turning introspectively as to different, I don't want issues, but things that are out there that people are concerned about and are wanting to be part of a solution and future with this.
Well, Camille, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so grateful. Again, great podcast that you all have. Do you want to share that with everybody?
Yes, I can absolutely do that.
Okay. And with no hearing, well, I know we've got questions, but I know we've also run out of time. And for everyone's sake, we are going to let you get back to the important work that you do. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, Camille.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Camille.
Thank you, Camille.
All right, Tony and Jennifer, we've got a few minutes here, just the three of us, before we begin our InSpan panel. And so I thought it would be a good chance to kind of see if you had any thoughts about Camille's presentation. And while you're doing that, I'm going to figure out how to adjust my shades here so that I don't look like I'm sitting in the shadow of a tree. So give me a minute. You guys go ahead and chat amongst yourselves.
I think some of the profound takeaways that I had is that I really was pleased that she mentioned about the MIT study at the end, that there is an awareness of the fact that there are unknowns. And while there are incredibly many levels of very positive things happening in the AI area, we are aware that there are problems. And the fact that they're wanting to step forward and say, let's be part of the solution with this, I think is important. And I think it's also important to keep an eye on that and to make sure, hold them to that, make sure that that is a focus for them that continues as we learn more and progress through our future of what this looks like for us.
Yeah, I was fascinated about how they collect the data. That there's this kind of internet data, but there's also very personal data that they collect from all of us to basically tailor everything that we're seeing on our screens, whether it's our phones or iPads or whatever other kind of tablets, and that's how we're getting messages. And that the thing is, if you keep going down this, I keep saying a hole here in Ohio. That it does sound like it increases likelihood of coming with some mental health issues from these entities.
Well, and it is I prefer to call it a rabbit hole, because it is. The longer we go through, the more that we do uncover, and the fact that we have. When Senator Klobuchar was even speaking, the act that she and Senator Cruz are putting together of, we have to put some guardrails on here. There have to be some protections, because we are aware that this has intimate knowledge of us, who we are, and what our feelings may be at any time. And we have to be so cognizant of that and remember that while this is great, the human being to human being, clinician to patient, peer to peer is so important and simply cannot be replaced.
Well, and I don't know whether or not my technology innovation of having light come into my camera worked or not, but it's interesting as the senator and the congressman were speaking and as Camille was speaking, one of the questions that I saw, somebody asked, is there innovative work being done right now to figure out how AI can serve as an interventional tool in suicide prevention? I don't think any of us here are Luddites, right? I mean, we're not anti-technology. We're not anti-this. We're not anti-technology. We're not anti-AI. I think for me, and I think for a lot of folks that we talk to, the issue here when we talk about things like interventional tools with AI acting as a therapist and things like that, we're nowhere near the development of these technologies for any of those types of things to be able to be implemented without significant regulatory intervention, right? Tony, I know in your state you've got a bill that you're working on that would prohibit the kids from using chatbots. Here in Minnesota, we're doing the same, and I know throughout the country there are a lot of different organizations that are working on that. And I don't think any of them are anti-technology. I think what they are saying is not yet. We're not ready. These technologies cannot replace humans, right? And so, we're working with therapists here in Minnesota and elsewhere in the country who are saying the problem is that technology can't understand the nuances between each individual human being, right? even the three of us who are on this conversation each have our own nuances, body language, how we react to things, and things like that, right? And so I think all of us who are in this space recognize that there's the potential for significant good. But at the moment, we are recognizing that it's not just potential for harm, but we're actually seeing it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with our bill in Ohio, that's what we we've done a couple press conference. We've done some things with the legislators who have introduced it. It's House Bill 524 in the state of Ohio, which would put a $50,000 fine on AI chatbot companies where their product encourages suicide or self-harm. Again, we're not, it's kind of like I always compare it to speeding, that we aren't saying that cars are bad, but we have to have, for the safety of everybody, some kind of rules to make it safe for people to be on there. So, and if you speed, then you're going to get a fine. And this is much like the same concept, that if there is, if there are rules that are broken to where you're to where these entities are encouraging people to harm themselves or die by suicide, then that company should be held accountable monetarily. And then, the other part would be that money is then given to 988 in our state to help encourage an option for suicide prevention. So I think it really is important that we do this, and hopefully this is done in a smart way, and that we're not looking at something that the old prohibition where we're going to just shut things down. So that was my thought on that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the genie's out of the bottle, right? I mean, I think with social media platforms, I think we know all too well the harms that they have inflicted on kids. And at the same time, we know we're not getting rid of these platforms. They are as much of our kids' DNA as when we were, well, I'm older than both of you, but when color television came out, right? And stuff like that. I mean, each generation has their own technology evolution, and and from the industrial age on until today. And so we're not going to get rid of these technologies, but I think we all, as policymakers, as advocates in this space, have an obligation to figure out how do we protect people, kids and adults, right? So it's not just kids, but kids and adults from the harms of these things, right? Tony, to your point, we're not going to get rid of cars, but we ought to make them safe, right? We're not going to get rid of AI, but we ought to make it safe, and it ought to be safe for everybody. And we ought to have public policy in place that reflects that. So I think we are going to get ready to start a panel conversation about a lot of these issues and talk a little bit about the formation of the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network. We've got a couple of other members of NSPAN who are going to join us. This conversation can be moderated by Stephanie from your organization, Tony. So I think we are probably ready to go ahead and bring everybody on, and we'll let the people that are doing all the magic in the background bring on our panelists and bring on Stephanie. And
yes, hi. Thanks so much, Eric and Jennifer and Tony, for the great conversation so far. We really appreciate that. As you mentioned, I'm Stephanie Bucher with the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, and joining us now, we have a couple of other NSPAN board members, and I'd love for them to have an opportunity to kind of introduce themselves a little bit. Tazora, were you able to work out the audio problems? Are you able to hear us okay? And can you give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are in your organization?
Hey, how you doing? Yes, I can hear you guys perfectly now. My name is Tazara Moore. I'm the founder of Hear My Cry Foundation, located in Dallas, Texas. I founded my organization in 2013. I lost my husband to suicide in 2012. which encouraged me to start an organization to bring awareness to mental health and suicide in the underprivileged community. We provide free counseling to anyone that are suicidal but do not have insurance. We do burial assistance and also medication assistance to families.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out today. Amy, introduce yourself to us, please.
Thank you, Stephanie. My name is Amy Zell. I'm with Grief and Loss in Motion out of Warren, Ohio, Trumbull County area. We provide peer support to survivors of suicide loss and other traumatic losses. We run the Trumbull County Loss Team, which is dispatched by our coroner's office to provide immediate support at the scenes of suicide loss, as well as support groups, maker grief programming. We have a lot of different prevention and postvention rules within the community.
Okay, wonderful. Appreciate everyone joining us today. And as we have done throughout today's presentation, if you folks who are participating wherever you may be today, we'll be monitoring the comments for any questions that you have for our panelists. I know that we've talked a little bit about, what's happening related to policy when it comes to artificial intelligence, but I'm curious whether personally or professionally, how artificial intelligence is influencing your work. I don't know if anyone wants to be volunteered at this point to start, and maybe I'll just volunteer Tony first because he's my boss. So. Yeah, Tony, tell me, how have you been able to, or have you integrated AI into your work?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Stephanie. And I think the way that I have is from a pretty simple. I'm an older fella, and my 16-year-old uses it for all kinds of different things. But I use it, quite frankly, if anybody ever asks me for a recommendation letter, and I get a lot of those requests, it 100% anymore, it's written by AI. I love you all, but I'm not a good letter writer, and they do write beautiful recommendation letters. On the other side, though, I do hear from a lot of parents, and one of the things that we've shared internally in Ohio is that we've had some parents step forward personally that have come to us, and we know that there were 9 suicides in about a week in Franklin County, down in Columbus, and some of the surrounding areas, and of kids, and we saw that, or at least the parents told us that 4 of those kids had their letters written by their suicide letters written by AI. So they had, contacted and, had relationships with these entities. And that's where, for as much as I love AI on helping me write recommendation letters, it's also something that we have to take very seriously. That, especially as you go down that, and I'll use Jennifer's term, the rabbit hole, that's where things start to open up more, where it's a little more nefarious, for lack of a better term. And that's where I'm hoping that we can influence decision makers around the state, but also the country with our partners here, to make it a safer place for all individuals.
Zara or Amy, did you want to talk to this issue?
Yes, I could say that AI definitely has helped Hear My Cry in many ways, such as community engagement, marketing, internal planning. But the downfall is trying to get ahead, like he's mentioned, people having access to the AI tool and how they able to use it. So I would say that would be the downfall of how it impacted our work.
In our community, one of the things that was brought up was when a small organization is using AI and or ChatGPT documents or photos on social media, something that you can tell has been generated by ChatGPT. Some of our local individuals that are artists have brought up, well, how is your organization still serving us if you are replacing us with ChatGPT? So that has been an interesting perspective for us to take. We don't want to demonstrate or convey a message that artists, graphic designers, musicians, authors, any of them are of less value because we can use ChatGPT for some things now. So we're looking at really considering not using ChatGPT because that's been brought up to us.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in on that too. I mean, again, it kind of goes back to comments that I've made before. Is we're not anti-technology, we're not anti-AI. I think recognizing at the moment that we live in what the benefits are is important, right? I mean, the reality is that there are some clear benefits of AI, particularly if you're a small nonprofit. I mean, let's be honest, right? Is that, if you don't have a big administrative staff and things like that, it can help speed up some tasks, which are generally pretty tedious and time consuming, right? So you can't walk away from that reality. I think when it comes to the issue of kind of basic human interaction, though, right, and replacing human interactive skills and engagement, those are the places where I think people are rightfully very, very concerned. And I remember years ago when the internet kind of became a thing, right? And this is going to date me with this story, but those of you who may remember the name Senator Ted Stevens, there was a hearing that they had in the Senate to talk about the internet, technology, and all these things. And Senator Stevens was a remarkable leader in his home state of Arkansas and represented very well, began talking about how the internet was a series of tubes, right, that kind of connected it. Well, literally the internet was not and still isn't a series of tubes. But what it underscored was policymakers at the time were relatively ill-equipped to understand technology at the time. And I think we're in that moment of tubes and AI, which is, I don't know that policymakers are as equipped as they should be to help understand and address these issues related to AI. And so I think these kind of conversations that we're having Camille, having Senator Klobuchar, Congressman Byron, I think helps all of us understand better the policies that we need to be talking about so we can understand better how we can actually regulate these things.
I am curious because I think we've talked about some of the potential benefits, but specifically, do any of you see any potential benefits to what AI could bring to suicide prevention?
I know in my organization, we're actually able to use the real life data that we're able to pull in one space of the AI tool that we use.
Jennifer, do you have a comment about that particular aspect of the potential benefits?
Actually am chuckling. Jazora, I'm very much the same way. We're doing big work with a small number of people. So it hasn't replaced the human elements of our work. It's supporting them. And yesterday, I literally needed to update the most current numbers and information out of the CDC and Department of Health and Human Services. So I went to my assistant because the cat just was not available, and it was able to pull that latest data for me. And after verifying it, which I still always have to do, it was correct, and it saves times. I mean, it helps us here at Kevinsong in three really practical ways of just operational efficiency, drafting the communications, preparing board materials, helping create templates and things that, in my mind, I have great things that I want done, that I want to be able to provide, that I simply don't have the time for. And then it really also, with education and awareness, is supporting the development of clear and compassionate messaging that follows safe messaging guidelines. So
Yeah. And I think I saw earlier some folks were making some comments along to that point. Is there a way that we can, rein in the AI technology to feed it that if this happens, tell them to call or chat 988 or, be able to cut that kind of conversation off. A potential benefit that AI may be an advocate for finding that mental health resource or reaching out for support through 988.
Yeah, and there was a company in Ohio, Clarigen Health, and they had developed a technology using AI that would, as someone was talking to a person, it would actually listen. It was an app. Listen on the phone, and that would then measure a person's voice intonations and the words that they used, and all of these other things. It was originally, I guess, from the Department of Defense, to basically put someone about how suicidal a person is, which was kind of fascinating. They won an Ohio Innovation Award for this technology. So I think there are, again, some benefits, but as everyone's spoken about, it's that human interaction that has to be there as well, and not just letting an app or a website or ChatGPT determine who is suicidal and who is not. There also has to be that human element to it.
Yeah. One of the groups we work with.
I definitely agree. I was actually able to help a family that was located in California due to ChatGPT, that he was looking for resources. So it definitely have its pros.
Okay. Thank you for adding that. And Eric, you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to jump in. So we work with a group, and you all may be familiar with it, Stop Soldier Suicide. They have an initiative called the Black Box Project. And what that project is all about is they take the cell phones of individuals who've died by suicide. They make all the data in it anonymous. And what they are trying to do in collecting this data and aggregating it is determine if there are patterns that are unique to veterans who are dying by suicide, right? Are there pages that they were looking at? Were there conversations? Were there text messages? What are those things that connect them together as a community of interest who we clearly know are at high risk of suicide, right? And so if you want to learn more about that, feel free to reach out to Stop Soldier Suicide or reach out to us. We'd love to put you in touch with them, so that they're looking for more people to participate by donating their phones of loved ones who died by suicide. My point in raising that is that that's the kind of innovation that I think that AI potentially can bring to the field that we're working in, right? Is that aggregating massive amounts of data in a way that we currently can't, to see whether or not it provides a better pathway to understanding who is most at risk and most at risk in an immediate moment, right? So I do think that AI's potential in identifying characteristics and traits and patterns of individuals who are suicidal, dealing with suicidal ideation, may be as powerfully impactful as mapping the human genome in terms of our ability to address the issue of the fact that none of us can just look at somebody and say that person is likely to attempt suicide, right? I don't think we're anywhere near that, but as I think of the promise of AI in the work that we do, I think that's one of the places that I look at and think, that could be an area of great potential.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
When we've been talking about some of the legislation, whether it was federal legislation, some states have already implemented some legislation as well that regulates AI. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have Senator Husted join us. He sent his regrets, but he is a sponsor of Senate 2714, which is called the Chat Act, that would require artificial intelligence chatbots to identify age verification measures and establish protections for minor use and for other purposes. So things like that legislation, the other legislation that I think Camille spotlighted as well, and as well as Senator Klobuchar and Congressman Beyer. I want to throw this out to whoever would like to speak to this. What can we do? Like, if I am, obviously working for a statewide nonprofit, but if I'm a smaller nonprofit, or I am part of an organization of some kind, or I am just an individual who's concerned about this issue, what can I do about this? What can I do to help advocate for our kids, for our families, and for our mental health?
I would recommend, if you're passionate about it, to reach out to your local, state, and federal representatives and share your thoughts, and let them know that you want them to advocate. Let them know that you want this kind of support, and keep at them. I would recommend that you either call, email, whatever. Please don't go in public. I'm sure that there are many that do show up, but let your thoughts be known to those that you have elected to represent you and your districts, and allow them to take it to the highest levels and pass these bills to ensure the safety of not only our kids, but our future.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I also encourage organizations to join programs like NSPAN. That's why we're here, or my organization is here, because I want to learn more about what's happening nationally, how to advocate properly, and make sure that I'm learning everything that I can for my community. Because we can't stay in a silo when it comes to suicide prevention. We all have to work together.
That's a perfect cue, Amy, for the question I know that was put into the comment section from folks who are listening. Can we explain just a little bit more about what NSPAN is, and then talk to the role that NSPAN might be playing in addressing the AI when it comes to suicide prevention? Jennifer, did you want to start on that one?
Sure. We keep using the acronym NSPAN, and it's the National Suicide Prevention Advocacy Network. We are a group of smaller nonprofits across the nation who see the value in collaborative efforts and working together to make sure that, because we are small, and we've got Tazara you're in Texas, is that correct? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, and Amy in Ohio, and me in Michigan, and we've got, I'm thinking Dennis, who's in North Carolina. We're bringing all of our expertise of our personal areas together to share and empower each other, because as a whole, we're a lot more powerful from information resources and the ability to reach out and have a unified voice than we ever will be individually. And the more the merrier. If anyone out there is in an organization that would like to be a part of NSPAN, please reach out to us. I know that we have the information in our website scrolling on the screen. Please do reach out to us. And we're happy to give you information, whatever you need. Tony, would you like to share additional as to how the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation and SAVE decided to bring through? And I think that it would be important to hear how you decided to spin that off as well.
Sure, and thank you. And Jennifer, she is our initial. She's our chair. She will always be in the history of NSPAN as the first chair of NSPAN. So this is a relatively new group, and it's something that there are a lot of amazing national organizations that we could go on and on about. Obviously, AFSP does phenomenal work. The Jed Foundation, Trevor Foundation. You've got all of these great groups, but there's so much great work being done at the local level as well. And that's where it was. We felt there was a bit of a missing piece. Like, how do we make sure that folks know about each other? A lot of times in Ohio, I know Amy, you and I've chatted, that it kind of feels like you're on an island, that you're doing this work all by yourself. So to bring together smaller nonprofits that might not be doing national work, but are doing such valuable work at the local level, that is really, really valuable. So Eric and I got to know each other and came up with this idea that how do we bring groups together to have these conversations, because there are huge implications with AI. And in my opinion, and this is way before a lot of folks, the only thing that ever changed drunk driving laws in the state or in the country was Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It was a bunch of frustrated individuals who said, we can't lose any more kids. We can't lose any more people, husbands, dads, to drunk driving. And they changed the entire culture. So that's what we're hoping that can be done. And that's what we believe can be done with InSpan. Eric, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two of you have done a remarkable job on that. And Amy, thank you for triggering this question. But, in Washington, D.C. today are dozens of parent survivors who represent dozens of different small nonprofits as well as themselves, who are in Congress, walking around the floors of the U.S. House, lobbying for passage of the Kids Online Safety Act. Okay. Each one of these parents are from all corners of this country. They are there raising their voice and their advocacy, and they are the ones that are making an impact in getting laws like the Kids Online Safety Act passed. Ultimately, they're the ones who are out in California right now that brought legal action against some of these big tech companies that have created significant harms for their children. Advocacy works best at the grassroots level and bubbles up, not the other way down. And I think as we look at the folks that have joined InSpan, they reflect that kind of passion and advocacy voice of those parents in DC and those parents in California. You got to have people that are willing to share the important work they're doing. I brought up the comment about the human genome. We didn't crack the human genome until the internet connected scientists all across the globe who had been working on trying to crack the human genome for decades. And suddenly the internet connected everybody and wow, we figured it out. I am convinced that all of the work that small and mid-sized suicide prevention nonprofits are doing across the country, we are going to learn about things that they're doing that are working, that we ought to be replicating, that we ought to be looking at implementing into policy. One of the things you always got to remember is that the experts are not sitting out in Washington, D.C. or New York or L.A. They're often sitting in small towns like in Ohio and North Carolina and Texas and Minnesota, because they're on the boots doing the work every single day. And I think that's what excites me the most about InSpan, is engaging with those organizations doing that work, finding out what they're doing, learning from them, and making sure that we can share that, and then taking all of those voices and collectively using those voices to advocate for policies that I think we all know we need to be working on. So I'm off my soapbox.
This is a question from the audience that is not, there are some tie-ins to AI, but I will go ahead because I know it was a popular one. As we see financial challenges contributing to that can cause suicide risk, do you know of any organization or anyone addressing specifically those concerns? Just throwing it out for the group.
Can you repeat the question,
Yes,
Stephanie?
does financial challenges can contribute to increased suicide risk? Do you know of anyone or any organization that might be addressing those types of concerns?
I could speak on that because that's what my organization does. We provide free counseling to anyone that are suicidal but do not have insurance. So Hear My Cry Foundation is definitely an organization that you could look into for financial assistance for counseling.
Okay. And I know we here at Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation have also talked about the link of the financial considerations and how that impacts suicide and mental health as well. And Jennifer, can you share a little bit about what kind of trainings your organization does for schools and behavioral health departments?
Absolutely. Now, with the schools, we're still working to get into many schools. Most of what we're doing is through faith leaders, behavioral health systems, things like that, where we understand the power of peer-to-peer awareness, prevention training. And we're simply not creating recreating a wheel. We're going in and offering the QPRs, the question, persuade, refer, the safe talk, that 4-hour training that really helps you learn not how to actually be the clinician, because that's not what any of us are, but we can be that life raft. When a person is having suicidal ideation, is in a bad place, to be able to let them know, here's my hand, my shoulder, and my heart. I hear what you're telling me. I'm going to be here as your life rep to get you to that person who is trained to help you so that you don't have to go this alone. You don't even have to talk. As I'm passing you off to this person, I can do all the talking for you. I will be continuing to say, did I pass that information on correctly? Am I giving the correct information so that the person that we're handing you off to verifies that this is how you're feeling? But it is so potentially, we know, especially with our first responders and our faith leaders, that so often people find themselves in a situation that they've not been trained for, that they would like to be trained for, and that we can train them for. And it alleviates the pressure on every person in that situation, and it saves lives, period.
Okay, perfect.
So, Stephanie, can I come back to the question that you had asked about resources, financial resources?
Yes, please.
Yeah. We partnered with a nonprofit that I actually used to lead several years ago called Spare Key. They have a program called Help Me Bounce. And if you go to helpmebounce.org, it is a nationwide platform that was created, and it essentially allows people to donate money to families that are dealing with the financial crises, oftentimes associated with the medical crises. One of the categories that is on helpmebounce.org is actually suicide. And so, as we all know, families who've been impacted by suicide have financial challenges that are unique and different to them. And so if folks want to learn more about that, it's through Spare Key, but it's called helpmebounce.org. And the goal of it was to, one, give people an opportunity to share the story that they've had being impacted by suicide. So again, helps us kind of address the issue of stigma associated with suicide by talking about it, but also to reach out and say, you know what, we have been impacted financially by this, and ask for help. That is a tough thing for a lot of suicide loss survivors to be able to do, right, is to ask for help, and particularly ask for financial support. So I know that they put in the comment section some other groups that are out there doing that work, but feel free to look at helpmebounce.org as well, because again, that is one effort to try to help address some of those unique financial challenges being faced by suicide loss survivors.
Well, and I think that's a really, this question is really important because it's, we're talking so much about AI kind of driving someone to suicide, assisting in a suicide or trying to talk someone into it. But I think there is some financial implications. I just saw a few weeks ago that Block, which owns Square and WhatsApp and some of those places, they laid off 40% of their workforce. It was all replaced by AI. Those are 4,000 jobs that are lost. And, that's a really, financial stressors are something that we can, look at and that can be a key to someone dying by suicide. And we need to make sure that, it's not just about the issue of whether someone's driving, an entity is driving someone to suicide, but also how much of humanity is going to be replaced with this in the job market.
Yeah. Can I also add, Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By World is a great resource for helping with those financial issues. That's a program that we offer, and one of our partner agencies we partner with, Thrive 1010, offers a lot. It comes from the Bridges Out of Poverty AHA process group, and it really is billed as a poverty program to teach people how to come out of poverty, but every ounce of it is prevention. It teaches how to get past that tyranny of the moment and be looking forward to your future and those financial instances as well.
Okay. So we were talking about how, NSPAN playing a role in addressing the implications of AI. Do you have any knowledge about, on a local level or community level, for resources or organizations that are working to prevent AI-related suicide specifically?
So I don't know of any specific organization specific to that at the moment. I think some of the information that Camille shared provides some information about groups that are out there. I think that question is one that I think we all need to reflect on, because I don't think there is a specific organization out there. I think all of us, through our collective work, are raising alarms about it and talking about laws that can help regulate that. I'm not familiar with any single organization that is focused on suicide prevention specific to AI.
Okay. I wanted to provide our panelists with an opportunity, if you would like to say some final words about this particular subject, and then I think we're probably going to be able to wrap up maybe a little earlier for folks to get on with their Wednesday afternoon. Amy, would you, not to put you on the spot, would you like to start us off on final words related to our discussion today about AI and the intersection of suicide prevention?
Yeah, I think it's important that we watch not just how IA interacts with people who are using it, but also how it affects the people who are facing losses, like those job losses and financial insecurities, what it's doing to our environment. We have to look at all those things when we're thinking about our prevention campaigns and how we're taking care of our communities, just being aware and maybe even using it to help figure out how to come up with those solutions.
Okay. Zora?
I think a lot of times we actually use AI, using the words AI does not put things in perspective, that AI stands for artificial intelligence. So that means that the information that we feed it is really what is pushing out. So a lot of times we kind of get caught up that it is a good tool to use for cost efficient, but it also cannot replace the human aspect or the human knowledge of providing those information regarding to suicide prevention.
Wonderful. Jennifer?
I think it's really important to remember that AI is a tool, not a solution. And that in suicide prevention, our solutions, they're always going to be rooted in people, relationships in the community. and it's going to be able to support our work. It cannot replace it.
Tony?
I just would like to remind everybody that we have a lot of. I know that there's a lot of battles, I guess, between parties and political, political folks. But when Senator Klobuchar and Ted Cruz can sit together on an issue and work together, this is an issue that impacts everyone, and it's something that I know that we have spoken to numerous congresspersons about this. And don't ever think that your voice is not important. Hearing from a constituent, hearing from someone who has been impacted is crucially important. So reach out to your congresspersons, your state legislator, your local decision makers. You can make a difference. And that's why, honestly, InSpan was formed, because we're a powerful voice together, but they have to hear our voice.
Wonderful. And Eric, if your final words on our panel discussion, and then we'll let you take it from here for closing as well.
It's a privilege to have been here today with all of you. I've been in this role for almost 3 years, and what never ceases to amaze me is the passion and commitment of folks that are in this space. Again, small nonprofits, mid-sized nonprofits who are out there doing this work every day. AI, you've all said it, it's a tool. We have to remember that we need to control AI, not the other way around. We need to set the ground rules. We need to set the parameters and the barriers around AI so that it is the tool that we control so that it creates the impact we want it to do. A lot of folks have raised a lot of really good questions. Tony talked about it. All of you have, which is the impact of AI goes beyond how do we use it. The impact of AI is going on how it is impacting jobs, the environment, everything around us. And we have to recognize that we can't just say, well, that's the cost of this great technology. We have to recognize that real people's lives are being impacted by it. And the work that all of us do in this space, we need to be ready to help those folks as well as they try to navigate through this. So having conversations like this are incredibly important and useful. So Stephanie, I think we have another date. Are you going to share that out with folks when our next conversation is going to be?
Yes, actually, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Our next webinar, as we continue to build on this conversation, is scheduled for Wednesday, June the 10th. We will try for a 1 p.m. Eastern time again, and hopefully that will continue to work out for most folks. We're going to add the registration link into the chat or the comment section, and we will also continue to send out information related to that upcoming webinar information as well. Yep.
And so for those of you who have an interest in InSpan, please go to the website. There's an interest form there. You can sign up. If you're a small, medium-sized nonprofit that's in the suicide prevention space, we would love to have you join this community of voices that are trying to become a very loud village of people advocating for policies that we think are critically important to helping prevent suicide. And so with that, I don't have anything else to add. Tony and Jennifer, if you want to have anything else to take us out of this conversation. But other than that, thank you all for participating. We will follow up with a survey to ask you how we did with this first webinar. Please let us know what we can do to make it better for the next one. Tell us what we did that you thought we did okay. And on behalf of all of us here at InSpan, thank you for what you do. Have a great day, everybody.